Can everyone see the screen?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so as Anna said, we're here to look at the pitch, basically. And who am I? Well, I'm Abena Lauber. I founded A Community, which is a fundraising consultancy in 2017. And since then, I co-founded the fundraising bootcamps and Comp to Fun, which are participative and very practical workshops aimed at passing on expertise and building capacity in fundraising for organizations of all sizes. I previously worked at Human Rights Watch, where I was the Associate Director for Development and Outreach, also worked for the Dr. Mukwege Foundation. And as Anna said, I've been working with a diverse number of organizations in different fields, going from humanitarian work, arts, refugees, energy, environment, and so on. So what are our objectives today? Well, I'd like you to feel free, first of all, to really ask any questions you may have. It's quite difficult to, well, I don't see everybody from the screen because of I'm sharing my screen. So if you have any questions, feel free to speak out if I don't see you. Because I am able to multitask, but to be very honest, I'm not that agile yet. So feel free to reach out. So today, the idea is to understand the importance of the pitch in the framework of the fundraising cycle. You all know how important it is anyway, because otherwise you wouldn't be here. But I would like to look at the fundraising cycle and see where the pitch can be most useful. And also the idea is to look at very practically how to create an impactful pitch to boost your fundraising activities. And I would like you to go away with knowing the key steps to create a clear and concise, impactful pitch. So we will go through most of the steps. There will still be some work for you to do on the backside, but the idea is for you to have all the processes available to do it. And as Anna said, if you would like to have a session with me afterwards to sort of finalize it individually, I'm more than happy to assist. So here, the importance of the fundraising cycle. I'd like to know, do you already know about the fundraising cycle? Sorry, oops. Does anybody use that term?
I think it's really useful for us to take us through that. I'd appreciate that. Okay,
with pleasure then. Okay, well, first and foremost, before I go into the fundraising cycle, is what is a pitch? I mean, we've all heard about the pitch. It started there's stories that say that it started in Hollywood when people wanted to pitch their films and they only had 2 minutes. There have been many stories around the use of the pitch, but what I like to see it as, it's a concise speech given to explain your organization, project or service or product with the objective to persuade somebody, to buy something, make a donation, join a cause or a mission. And an argument or other form of persuasion used in sales, that's initially what it was, but I put fundraising there because definitely fundraising is a form of selling an idea, trying to get people to adhere to your cause. And often in the non-profit sector, people don't like to look at it like a marketing and sales tool, but it is. We're just using different content. So the fundraising cycle. So there's many steps to the fundraising cycle, but the ones that are most commonly you'll find on internet are from the identification through to stewardship. But I like to start with the case for support. I feel that if every organization has a clear case for support, it's the first step before you start thinking about your fundraising. The case for support will provide you with your missions, your goals, your objectives, which programs and services you have, who are your beneficiaries, what are your objectives, what are your finances, your staffing, your program services, what is your planning and evaluations, and some information on your origins. So it's a concise sort of document that normally you would work at as an organization to have this all compiled. I often see organizations coming to say, oh, we're looking to raise funds, and they come with just one sort of bit saying, oh, we're looking for 100,000. They're not clear on what exactly it's for, what are their main overall funding goals and how it fits within the mission. So it's good to have a case for support if possible. The second phase is identification. It's looking for all the different potential donors, prospective donors, in different segments. It could be foundations, it could be individual small donations, major donors, corporates. It's sort of saying, I mean, who are these people that we're looking for, that would like to fund us? And where can I find them? And then in this big funnel, you just collect all the data and start qualifying them and saying, okay, you know, they're really aligned with our mission. We feel that ethically they work for us. And that's the phase of qualification. Once you've qualified, you will prioritize the ones that you will go approach, basically. And then you will start cultivating a relationship with them, bearing in mind that depending on the type of donor that you have, this cultivation process will vary. If we're looking at, I don't know, a call for proposal, which could be a means of raising funds, obviously there might be less direct contact where you're cultivating them and building a relationship and explaining what you're doing. Or sometimes it may be the case you may just have a phone call or none at all. It just goes directly to solicitation. And solicitation is where you're asking clearly for the money or support or pro bono or whatever it is. Once you've reached that phase, a highly neglected phase of the fundraising cycle is the stewardship. The idea is to keep the donors and to renew their commitment year after year. We know that, you know, the donors are more and more versatile. There's much more competition. So keeping your donors is key. Some donors will have a specific length of time that they will support you, but others may want to be loyal donors for a long time. So what's interesting here is what I wanted to look at is where do you think that the pitch can be used in the cycle? I sort of wanted to situate it. Could somebody share some ideas where you think that the pitch would be useful? At which phase? Take a guess.
Let's say case for support and solicitation.
Interesting. Anybody else? Thank you. I'll give the answers afterwards.
Say around between qualification and cultivation.
Also very interesting. Okay, one last one. Somebody else wants to take a guess?
Also go for somewhere between qualification and cultivation.
Okay, very interesting. So as you'll see, I mean, we can use it anywhere, but for the case for support, it's not wrong. I would say that it's actually, the pitch can come, it will be derived from a very clear case for support. All the information will be there. So I think it's useful to bear in mind that if you have a clear case for support, what are your services, what you're doing, your mission, that content is key to create your pitch. Where it's very useful, it's between identification and qualification. I mean, those two phases are basically one of the same. And here it's ideally, the idea could be that you're calling up a potential foundation and you're saying, you know, we would like to send an application. This is what we do. You use your short pitch. You wouldn't give them a 10-minute discussion on what you're doing. So it's very key. The more precise you are and clear you are with the pitch, the person, one may have an interest and say, yes, apply, or they'll be able to say, oh, indeed, you're very aligned. Another phase is the cultivation. Of course, this is very, very key. This is when you're making the first impressions, you know, that you figure out that maybe a major donor is interested in your cause. You want to make a first impression. You want to talk about your organization, build a relationship and build the credibility. Your pitch is the first thing that you would like to engage, to share with them, I would say, rather than invade them with too much information. And seeing as the pitch should be clear, concise, and bring out all the key elements that you want people to know about your organization or a specific project, it's key in the cultivation phase. And once you also have a pitch, we're talking about an oral pitch, but once you have a very good oral pitch, you can always use it in an introduction email when you're talking about your organization or your project. Solicitation, obviously it's key because, as I said, the pitch is to get people, persuade them to adhere, to join your cause. And here the pitch is is key. At the stewardship phase, I would say that it's not so important because at that phase, you're really thanking, you're keeping the donor happy, you're showing proof of impact. So I would say that it's a different type of communication that you want to have with them. You're really recognizing them, thanking them, and showing them what you're capable of doing. So, okay, next slide. So are there any questions at this stage? No? Okay. So as we mentioned, so I'm just going to see this messages in the chat. Okay. As we mentioned at the beginning, the idea is to be very concrete here and for you to go home with some elements that you could rework or refine in order to have an impactful pitch. I would also like to say that there could be different variations of a pitch. There's not just one perfect pitch. So this methodology that I want to share with you is based on the 3-minute rule by Brand Pinvidich. I don't know if anybody's heard of him, but I've been doing, I've been working on creating pitches for some time now. And I found that there's a plethora of things out there to create a pitch, and all of them are very interesting. But what I really liked about Brand Pinvidich's approach is that he says that you should be able to convey everything of value about your idea, organization, or project, and to create an engagement in the first 3 minutes. And often we hear about the 2-minute pitch. We could say maybe 1 minute. A lot of people talk about the time. I think that his time frame of maximum 3 minutes is interesting. The value of information is really key to him. So we work on what information do I put and selecting it there, and it gives you a process to do it. And then the way he proposes to transmit the information, it's in such a way that people can actually digest it and come to a decision. And all of this is something that he has done for years. So Brand Pinvidich, is the author of the 3-minute rule, which you can read at some point. He's an award-winning film director. So as you know, film directors have to often pitch films, and he's done it for many years. He is very successful. And he's CEO of an entertainment company, and he's also now a speaker. He's also done a lot of podcasts on how to write pitches and help business people convey their ideas in the most clear fashion. So for me, that was really, it just seemed clear and provided a very easy methodology, which I would like to share with you. Well, before I get into the actual methodology, what he says in his book, and there's been studies about it, is that it takes 3 minutes is the time that it takes for a human to form their first impression when you want to influence them. Bearing in mind that a recent study by Microsoft evaluates that our attention span is 8.2 seconds, and it's decreasing. I don't know how they came to this figure, but apparently a goldfish has an attention span of 9 seconds. So we're not doing too good. But apparently, what's interesting today is that people focus more intensely and more effectively. So the time we have to convey the information is very short. So if we're able to concentrate for only about less than 9 seconds, the idea of having a pitch is to keep people engaged in such a way for at least 3 minutes so that they can make a first impression. So you need to provide this information in a way that will keep them curious, and in order for them to come up with a decision in the end, and a decision which you would like them to arrive to. I mean, and we're not talking about manipulation, but we're helping them have all the elements in order to feel that your cause, your mission is important. And so this is what he says. Audiences today simply want information. They want it quick, clear, and concise. They must conceptualize. So this is really the idea of how he transmits information. They must conceptualize the idea, so really understand it. You know, all of you are working in diverse areas, and not everybody is an expert in this area. And particularly when you're cultivating different types of donors, they may not be technically in the know-how. So they need the information clear and simple so that they can conceptualize your idea, and then they can contextualize how it will benefit them. So when we talk about a benefit, a donor obviously wants to give to an organization because of specific motivations. The foundation has specific criteria that they want to fill, and if they're giving to your organization, because it aligns with their motivations, and they are actually getting a benefit from making this philanthropic investment. And finally, people need to actualize it. And then they actualize it with potential engagement for future interest. So they're like, how can I apply this in my life? So if somebody is adhering to a cause, for example, I heard policy change in India on renewable energy, and a certain donor has bears the same values and feels that it's something that is important in their life, they will understand the information in your pitch and say, okay, that works in my life. I would like to make this philanthropic investment. Plus, I'll be receiving information on the latest developments in this area, and I'll be close to the cause. So people are giving because they have a personal motivation or an organizational motivation. So basically, you will help them conceptualize, contextualize, and actualize it by the way you present your information. And we'll get into that next. And you have about 3 minutes to do so, and so do I. So I've gone beyond 3 minutes now. We will get into the main part. So what I wanted to ask is that Anna mentioned, I think sent you an email to prepare some keyword words. Was everybody able to do this or not? If you were able to, I'd like a thumb up, yeah, just to have an idea of how we'll be moving forward. Okay, well, at least some of you have. Okay, if you haven't, it's not a problem. We'll have a moment when we'll be able to work at it. So now we're looking at how to build an impactful pitch. So the first step is to simplify and identify your most important elements. So this is something you can do as an organization with several people in your organization, but you've done it on your own to start off with. And what I asked you to do is to come up with bullets or keywords in relation to your organization. Very broad, it's a broad brainstorming. Why Mr. Pinvidich proposes to do this is too often people decide that they want to come up with a pitch and they come up with lots of different ideas that they sort of put together in no particular format, and it's sometimes too complex. So the idea is to break it down to its most simplest form and build it up again. And most often when we're in everyday business, it just seems so obvious to us. So going back to bullet points really asks each person and each organization to think about what are the key words that represent the organization, a project, or the mission. So that's the first step. Then you will whack your information, which I'll get into. So whack is a process, is a methodology to organize your information in categories, and also a sequence in which the information is being transmitted. And that we'll look at afterwards, what it means. And then once we've done these key bullets, basically, these bullets will then be created into statements of value. So every key word that you've come up with must be a statement of value. And by that, I mean, for example, we could say, if one of your bullets is advocating human rights advocacy, that would become, we are the only organization in Southeast, in specific country advocating for human rights where no other person is dedicating the time, for example. So there must be a value in every statement. So no bullet is an empty bullet. It becomes a way to show your audience that you have value. So that's the next step. And then afterwards, we won't do it here. You would, once you've created your statements of value, you would work with other people within your organization or check with other people and see and get them to sort of say, to share the statements, and for them to come back and say, well, I don't really get what you're trying to say, so that you can refine it. So this is something that you can do as a group. But as I mentioned, it's something you can do afterwards. We will be looking at the WAC and also developing a few statements of value. And then the second step, basically, is to build your pitch using the three-stage format. So based on the WAC, and we'll see that afterwards, you've organized your key statements in different categories. You'll have to prioritize a number of statements which will be defined. And then you have 1 minute, 1.5 minutes maximum to inform, 1 minute to engage with them, and 30 seconds to confirm. and that we will get into the details afterwards. And once we've done that, there are also very key finishing touches that you can add once you've worked at the body. And here, I will show you a clearer format. So the key touches, the final touches are the edge, which come here, an opening and a closing, but those come afterwards. So if I may just ask, is it clear for everybody or am I going too fast? I just want to make sure that everybody's following the flow because it can be quite complex. Okay. I see some thumbs up. Okay, if there anybody that's feeling that you need more details, please let me know. So basically, the main body is what you'll be working at first. The way you open will be a function of what you put in your body. The edge is sort of a nice story that brings everything together. So an example would be, once you've created the body, you may want to give a story of a beneficiary, or the way a policy, the how do you say, the steps that a policy was approved in order to sort of how do you say, to make your content more real and more concrete. And people, it's that aha moment where they would be like, oh, I get it now. So a simple example that will help them to sort of understand what you're trying to say. And the closing is very short, but a lot of people forget it. It's just about having a clear call to action. The idea is to arouse curiosity and always have a next step, because people will have a pitch and then they're like, okay, that's done. But you need to ask them what you want. And if you're not asking for money at that point, you may want them to have a meeting, to have perhaps to follow up. So it should always be very clear. And if your pitch is done in a way that's compelling, people will start engaging with you and asking questions. So now, if I get into the details, so the main part of the body, WAC, what he says is that all the information should be organized in 4 categories. The bullets that you've created with statements would say basically, some would be, what is it? They would talk about anything that explains the mission, the goal, the project, and your vision. How does it work? That's H. The literal function, how you respond to the problem, your methodology. Are you sure? Facts, context, numbers, logic, or reason to validate what you're saying. And can you do it? Your expertise, your impact, your partners, your funding models, projected cost, and what happens next. So as you see, this information is organized in this order and should be presented in this order. If we go back to the fact that he says first they need to conceptualize, in order to conceptualize things, I need to know what it is and how it works. And then to put it into context, I also understand how it works, some of the methodology, and when I start looking at the actualizing, I can basically say, am I sure that this organization and person can do it? How are they doing it? How does it function? And then the person can go through this process and say, okay, I really get it. And the information is presented in a way that can be digested. And often many pitches started with, big statements saying, we are the only organization that, that has changed policy in the past 5 years. It's great, but what Pinvidich is actually saying is that when you start off a pitch like that, people will spend their time trying to find the proof of what you're saying. So they're no longer listening to you. They're like, okay, so you stated that, prove it to me. Are you sure? So by starting with the context, the concept and the context, you're giving them the information, and then you're answering their questions as you go along, basically. So that's the main part. I will move on. I think there's some more people coming into the session. Okay, now basically what I would like you to do is to whack your content. So now we're in this step 1. So what I asked you to do is to look at the bullets, to create bullets about either your organization or a project. And the idea was to come up with bullets that were very large, that would, some of the questions could be, what do you do and what do you do well? What are the problems, needs that you're addressing? What do you bring to the table? What solution do you bring? What evidence, what methodology, what change? Why is it important? I put it twice, why is it important? And why you, basically. And it could be other things. And the idea is really to have keywords. So I hope that you haven't created any sentences yet. I also asked you to put them in categories, just so that you could start thinking about, certain bullets are common, have commonalities. But what you're asked to do now is to look at these bullets and create statements of value. I'll give you some time, basically, to do it in 20 minutes to do it individually, and I'll come around in the room, in the breakout rooms. And at the same time, once you've created your statements of value, I would like you to organize your statements of value in these 4 categories. Statements of values that talk about what it is, how it works, are you sure? So the facts, context, and numbers, and can you do it? And here are the explanations. Perhaps you can write it down, basically, so that you know exactly what goes in these different categories. So you'll have 20 minutes to do that. The main point now is to really ensure that every bullet has a statement of value to go with it. And before you go into your individual rooms, I would like to do a few examples with you here in the plenary, so that we're quite clear on what it can be. So perhaps one or two of you could share a bullet that you've written down or that you can think about now, so that we could build the statement of value together. Who would like to have a try? And there are no wrong answers. Anybody?
Can I share mine?
Yes, thank you very much, Rita.
So, I will share in comment box, so you can write it you can write the statements from there. Is that okay? I can write them in comment box.
I just need one keyword, yeah.
Climate change.
Okay, so if we have the word climate change, so your organization, remind me, you're working in which area? What's
advocating renewable energy.
In India, right?
In Pakistan.
Pakistan. Okay, so how could you create a statement of value with regard to climate change? Because I imagine that there are other organizations working in climate change in Pakistan, right?
Yes, they are working.
So what could be a statement of value for climate change?
So to capture the issue of climate change, we are advocating renewable energy, and we are trying to communicate to the governmental bodies or to the relevant stakeholders about the retirement of the fossil fuels which we are using. So this is something different that our organization is doing, because we have organizations who are only working on climate change from different perspectives. For example, there will be tree plantation type of organization. They are working on tree plantation. We are working to reduce the pollution through power sector of Pakistan.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Rita, as you see, thank you for this information. What you've explained is in a long sentence. So the idea is to create one sentence explaining that. So, I mean, I don't know your organization 100%, but what seems to be the key elements is that you're the only organization in Pakistan advocating for climate change with policymakers. Is that the case?
Yes.
So that is a statement of value. So when you come up with a bullet like that, it should come up with one phrase. Because all the information, and this is what often happens when we build a pitch, we try to explain too much information. But what is key to the audience here is that nobody else is doing this. And that's what they need to know. Was that useful, Rita?
Yes, that was useful.
Okay, so there you have one statement of value. So ideally, on each Post-it or each piece of paper that you have, ideally this should be done on a Post-it, you have the keyword climate change, and then you have the statement underneath. And then this will allow you, so this, if we look at the statement, it would go under the category of what it is. So it explains your mission, your goal. So that goes in the W category. Bearing in mind that you will have you have up to 40 to 60 statements. We're only going to look at a few now, but you can really, the idea is to have many statements that you will then organize and then prioritize. Does somebody else want to share a keyword?
For example, energy transition.
Mm-hmm. So
we are working for mobilizing community and advocating to policy stakeholders for policy change and improve practice in the energy sector, particularly for energy transition.
Okay, so you are mobilizing communities?
Yes.
And stakeholders?
It's stakeholders, of course.
Okay, so could we say that those are two, because the idea of this statement of value, there should be one idea per statement. So that what I didn't explain before is that each one of these statements of value will then be built up in a narrative. We will build it up together. So one idea per statement. So here you're saying that you mobilize communities. I guess that's one group. And then the way you approach stakeholders, is it in another way as well?
Sorry?
Do you approach for energy transition, do you have a different methodology with them when you mobilize communities and the way you mobilize the state, you communicate with stakeholders? Do you have two different strategies?
Yes, of course, two different strategies. Community where building a fossil fuel.
Mm-hmm.
So community will aware about the negative impact of fossil fuel industry.
Mm-hmm.
And the civil society or the stakeholders mobilizing for particularly to mention community issues and policy gaps or introduce new policies.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if we want to keep this idea simple for somebody to understand it, so we are we're advocating for energy transition at two levels, through mobilizing communities and working with civil society. Is that sort of encapsulating the main ideas? So that's important. Then
right.
if I were to question that further, I would say, and so what? What difference are you making? It feels like it's lacking something. So it's interesting. These are the two approaches, but could you maybe, what is the value of doing this? So the idea is you're always asking yourself, what is the value of doing this? Okay, so we have this two-tier approach, which is great. That gives them information. But what is the value? Why did you do this strategically?
Particularly for building a green society.
Mm-hmm. So that's good.
Building a green and energy efficient society, if I detail out it. And the final goal is stop climate change.
Mm-hmm, of course. But a lot of people are trying to stop climate change, right?
Yes.
So you need to always think, what is my value? It's that angle. It's like, what is it that I'm bringing to the table? So I would, if I may, so I don't know the organization fully.
So more specific in our practice. So safeguarding people and environment in the ground level, and changing policies in the national level through civil society stakeholders. And at the community level, they are working for safeguarding themselves, the people who are living around the fossil fuel industry, and safeguarding environment at the local level.
Very well. So keeping it simple, we want one sentence, right? So the energy, so we work to create energy transition through two tiers by mobilizing communities and civil society stakeholders in order, we're working the promotion of energy transition with through mobilizing communities in order to safeguard, how you were saying, to sort of, what was the word you said? Safeguard
Community.
the
Community
community
people,
and with
safeguarding.
stakeholders such as civil society in order to bring about policy change.
Right.
So as you see, we had the basic information, what the two, it's a methodology. You have these two axes that you're working on, but you need to always put the value. Why are we doing it? So that comes up with your value statement for energy transition. Okay, so you should note that down. And then afterwards, when you're putting it in a category, it would be basically about how does it work, the literal function. So you put it in that category. So I'm hoping that it's becoming a bit more clear. Is it becoming clear for you? Would it be something you would be able to do on your own?
Yes.
In a little
Yes.
group?
Yes, clear.
Yes.
Thank you.
So please make sure it's one idea. Try to keep it simple. The methodology is bringing you back to the basics because people want simple information. I don't work in the energy transition or environmental space, for example. So I need the information to be digested and clear. No technical jargon, no, all those are not useful in a pitch because people won't be able to conceptualize it and you'll lose them. So I would suggest that we take, let me see what time it is now, if you bear with me 2 seconds. I think I'm in the narrow timing now. I said that it would be approximately, yeah, we have till, what time is it? 40. Okay, so I was thinking we could spend, let's say 15 minutes separately. Anna's going to try and put you all in individual rooms, and I'll come in to the rooms and help you with some of the statements. And then we can come back in the main group and share some of these statements. The idea is for you to tell us what the bullet keyword was and what statement you've come up with in order to get feedback from the group and also from myself. And this is the sort of checking, is it clear for us? Is the statement clear, or is it too complex, or can you improve it? And as you're going through this process, you may have more bullets. For example, if you've come up with 30 bullets, and as you think about it, you're like, oh my God, this is really important. Write down a new bullet and you can work on it afterwards. And perhaps what would be interesting for you to see, I'll put this here because I think it will help you also understand. So when you're delivering your pitch, so we said we want to inform them, engage them, and confirm. So the information part is more about here, the 1 and 2, the engaging is, are you sure? That's when people are like, oh, okay. And confirm is the can you do it? And you will, once you've created these categories, the WAC method basically tells you how many statements you need to have. So the first phase that you're doing now is the broad brainstorming of organizing all the different statements in the categories. And the next phase will be to prioritize the key statements you want based on what you're trying to convey. And you will have 9 for what it is, 7 statements for how does it work, 6 for are you sure, and 3 for can you do it. So this has been really thought through by Brent Pinvidich of what needs to go in the in the pitch. And what is important as well is that you will be looking at creating a narrative. We'll get more into more into details of this. But basically the narrative is once you've organized all your information in the WAC, what you want to do, sorry, I'll go back here. There. What you want to do is to have 25 statements that are 3 minutes max, and that will follow with and then. Because Pinvidich has been working in the Hollywood scene for years, so he's building the pitch like a story. So when you put just 9 statements down in what it is, they have to follow a sequence. There'll be this, you'll choose 1 statement, and then, and then, and then. It may seem complex at this stage, but when you start seeing all your statements that are organized, it will just have a natural flow. So perhaps you'll talk, our mission is to do X, Y, Z. We've been in this space for so many years and no other actor has been working in this field. and we deal with lost causes or forgotten causes because nobody else is doing it, and blah, blah, blah. And every time it's and then, and then, and then. And if it doesn't flow, that means there's some information missing. So that is the end product, basically, the end process that you will come to once you've gone through all the steps. But I thought it would be useful to sort of have an idea of what it is, at this point. So, Anna, if I may, now going around in the different rooms, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you, Kai and Julia as well. First of all, I've seen some tools in the rooms that I want to share with you guys. So Brenda and also Rita's group used, well, I think Rita just used a whiteboard that was in Zoom, which is interesting. So that's a personal lesson that I think we can do when you're working as a group. But Brenda has a tool that actually has Post-its, and I got into that room and I thought I was in cyberspace. It was amazing. And perhaps Brenda, you can share this tool because it's something that's very collaborative and can be useful when you're working as a group.
Sure.
So if I may, I thought it would be useful to share the practical point.
Yes, it's oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's I can share the link. Jamboard.
So I think for recycling priorities, it's good not to use Post-its, because I said, hey, let's all use Post-its. But this is another way perhaps to do it, and also collaborative because it's on Google Drive. So, you know, this is something that you can use. And I also forgot to say that the statements that you have, you keep them for life. They can evolve, but you can, you know, as you create and move your pitch around, you can use all these information and you won't need to go through the whole process all over again. You can just say, okay, this time I want another angle. I'm going to take my priorities out of my pick list, basically. So Brenda, if you can share, it would be great.
Sorry, I was only able to get until probably half of the value statements.
No problem.
But I think this one, so I did add a little bit onto this. So New Energy Nexus, we are addressing the world's biggest energy issues such as affordability, access, and sustainability through entrepreneurship and innovation.
Great. Brenda, so what was your keyword that you started off with?
I did start with so I guess it was innovation.
Mm-hmm.
And entrepreneurship, which is like our core audiences. And then I also did add the problems we are solving, which are expensive energy systems, you know, energy access, and also non-renewable energy sources.
So that you put all of that in one statement?
I did try to cover access, expensive energy, sustainable energy, innovation, and entrepreneurship in that statement.
I think your statement, can you put up your statement again? It's fine and it's interesting, but you could, yeah, I think it covers, no, you only have one issue. So it's fine. It's not too complex. So the idea is when you have a keyword, it's one statement. I mean, you can use words that from your other keywords, but you keep one statement very simple, because then you will build up with, you would take another statement and put it after, and another statement and put it after. And often the big mistake is that people want to make long phrases. The idea is keeping it simple. I spoke to Abigail, who was telling me that in her organization, they work with a lot of scientists and finance people, and it's very complex. So by keeping to the methodology where it says, let's stay simple. I want simple statements from one keyword and keep that as a rule. It forces you to stay to the point. As soon as you start building different ideas into one statement, then sometimes you lose people. So rather have several bullets that you put together with one idea per statement.
Okay.
So
okay. Makes sense.
Thank you very much. Perhaps, so as I said, I would like us perhaps to share on some of the feedback of what you've done and what you were able to put into place, or any questions you have, so we can share. Yeah, so thank you for that tool. If you want to use it, feel free to use it. Does anybody, perhaps Kai and Julia, would you like to share what you managed to put together, or any questions that you had?
Sure, I can share my board.
You also have a board. Okay. Wow. I need to get those boards done as well. I think it would be good for my next session to be able to show that.
I don't know if you can.
Oh, wow.
See.
I need a class in boards, I think. Okay.
So the circle post-its are some of the keywords that I tried to come up with based on the questions that you had given us. And then I was trying to like create sentences. I did find myself going sort of like back to like language that we already have, like putting proposals or other things, but I think it's good to just sort of like have it all in one place, so that then we can see how like we have some like nuggets of like very good communication that we could like. So I think we've done the process the other way around. Like we write a lot for our reports, for our proposals, etc. And perhaps part of this exercise is also tweezing those little good bits from there. So these are some of the sentences that I have. So the blue ones are sort of more based on like what we do, or like our methodology, the problem that we're trying to fix. So I was trying to go through your questions again, not only to generate the keywords, but also to see like what was what kind of question was I trying to answer when I came up with that keyword. So I wrote, we use our law enforcement background to create strong evidentiary dossiers. I put our mission there as well, because I felt like it was which is the next blue post-it was this one. It combines a bunch of the post-its that we had for the like how we do it, but I think it's sort of like it was also to help me sort of like remember that like I may want to speak to all of these points, but as you mentioned, perhaps in different sentences. So how do we use law? How do we use data? How do we use analysis? Because I don't think it's clear necessarily for people that are not working with us what it is exactly that we do. And it's one of the things that we struggle a lot with. But as you were mentioning from someone else, like it's really complex. They work with finance, they work with data, and it's just hard to make others understand what it is exactly that you do. Then I had a couple.
Sorry, if I may, what's really interesting here with your mission statement is that basically the bullets are power of law, data analysis to support allies, fighting for climate justice. So there's sort of 3 points, and it would be interesting, as you said. So we combine the power of law, and how do you do it? What do you do? You know, by I don't know, advocating for change in legislation. Which in turn will have an impact over the next 10 years, or I don't know, something like that. It would explain, if you break each and every one down, it would explain it clearly for each person. And I think that's key, because a mission is interesting, but sometimes in complex areas like human rights or others, people just don't get it, because we're laymen basically. So I think it's interesting to have different bullets, and then you can put them one after the other. Because as you see in the first part of the WAC, you need 9 statements. You could say we do this, and then this, and then this, and then this. There are 9 of them. So you could focus on the mission and bring about some other elements to it.
Yeah, that is very helpful, because I feel like we were trying to come up with a mission. This is an exercise we did recently that would like encapsulate everything that we do, and how what we do is different to what other people do. And I do fear that it may be too, like, it's good as a sort of like one sentence, but that's because we're lawyers and we love our stuff, you know, sub clauses, and we just pack a lot of information into one, into what was supposed to be one point. So yeah.
Okay, well, that's great. So I think, as your colleagues can also see, that the statements are varied. and there you've already organized them, which is key. And as you go along, you may have new ones. So this, as you say, the mission statement will perhaps become 10. Don't be afraid of having 10, just keep them in your categories and you just sort of pick and choose from the draws. I like the methane is responsible for 30% of today's warming. So some of you, I didn't see figures, and that's important to say, to use figures like that. I would just say, for example, methane is responsible for 30% of today's warming, and we are addressing this issue, in priority. It's a statement. We want to say what we're doing. So that's interesting. It's a fact. But what is it about it that's important? Or that is the core of our mission, or something that explains what you're doing. Always remember that you want to say how you're being differentiated and how you're bringing value on the specific statement. Okay, so maybe Kai, would you like to share as well, so that
Sure.
and then we're almost coming to an end, but I'll spend some time with you afterwards if you would like. Okay.
These are the keywords I jot down before the seminar. So I'm not sure, I don't think they exactly match what you suggested, but these are some of the keywords my organization, like the next group, is focusing on. I divided them by our identity, our goal, our theory of change, and our research topics. But because since recently I already started working on writing some paragraphs for pitching, so I ended up writing the speech like that.
Okay, why not? Yeah.
By 4 categories, the why. So, well, the first keyword I tried to work on was net zero transition. So should I just read them out, or?
Go ahead, yeah.
Okay, for the what part, we are a young, internationally trained civil expert group in South Korea, aiming to have impacts over high-level decision makers in government and industry to bring about policy changes to accelerate the country's net zero transition. Our goal is to pressure the government to implement policies and/or take legal actions to speed up coal phase out and the expansion of renewable energy to achieve carbon neutrality earlier than the government's recently announced target year of 2050. By guiding the policy changes, we believe we can most effectively and rapidly bring about systemic and structural changes of the Korean economy that is very export-oriented and carbon-intensive.
Okay, Kai, if I may, your introduction is good, it flows well. My question is that it seems that your sentences, there's a lot of information in each sentence, which is essentially something that we often do. But I would recommend going back to the very basic of a statement, putting one statement after the other before you create a flow. And then, you find these adding words. Because I get a sense that on certain points, you're giving too much information in one sentence, and it's not clear exactly what your value is. All I want to know is what your value is. Value does come across, but it's perhaps lost in many words. I don't know how you feel when you hear the sentence. Perhaps we can ask your colleagues, which is something that you should all do when you have your pitches, by the way. Ask colleagues, test it with your friends, get feedback. I don't know how it was received. Do you feel that there was the value is conveyed predominantly with what was shared?
Shared with who?
Sorry?
The ones I just shared.
I'm asking perhaps those who listened in the sentence. Do you really, and that, I mean, feel free to share. Do you feel that the value of the organization is evident, is quite predominant in what was shared? Were you able to feel that when you hear it? Or understand what the value is? And this is a positive feedback, by the way. It's not criticism that I'm looking for. Can anybody share what you sort of feel? Okay, well, it feels like I am alone in my...
I think they have a similar problem to us, that they're trying to like pack too much. So then ultimately it's not exactly clear what it is that you do, unless perhaps you're talking to someone that is familiar with it. Like when I read, for example, like now I have it in front of me, right? So like I can sort of understand that they're trying to like have impact at a high level, like a decision, high level decision making. But I'm not sure like how, like what, like I understand that comes later, but it's just sort of, I feel like I'm missing that bit at the beginning, just to like get a sense of like what's gonna come, or like what it is that they're due. I'm not sure if I'm being particularly helpful. I just feel like we struggle with the exact same problem of like, it may be clear to us, but I don't think it's necessarily clear to...
Yeah. So Kai, why I asked for feedback, it's not that there's nothing wrong with your pitch. Huh? It's just that it's you're used to it, and you can tell that you've been in the topic for a long time. And as Julia was saying, she has the same problem. So what I recommend is really to go back to bullets. I mean, the bullets you had before are great. Create your statements and put them in what, how, are you sure, and what, how, and can you do it? And then afterwards, you start creating sentences from a narrative, from the statements, very simple value statements. So, so you're a young, internationally trained civil expert group in South Korea. So we are a young, civilly trained civil expert group in South Korea. Active in, creating impact on high level, we have impacts on, when we're creating impact over high level decision makers in the government and industry. Full stop. That's already one thing. Then you have, we want to bring about policy changes. So then you would perhaps look at the policy changes, saying policy change. So basically, we bring about policy change. We bring about policy change so that the country is at a net zero transition. So actually, excuse me, I would actually start with, before talking about the team, I would say that we bring about policy change to accelerate the country's net zero transition with our young, internationally trained civil expert group based in South Korea. If you, I don't know whether you see the difference, if you bring about the value and how you're doing it, with whom you are, rather than explaining just who you are, in that order, you understand the value of having a young, trained civil expert group. Because what difference does it make to have a young, trained civil expert group? You need to have that value. Is it useful, Kai?
Yeah, of course. I was rushed, so yeah. I had to polish a lot. And I wanted to put a lot of information, but yeah, of course, I have to simplify all the sentences. I understood.
And there's nothing wrong, and there's a lot of value in there. And I think if you go back to the start again, which is what Brandt always says, which is complicated, start all over, unlearn, which is difficult when you already know, unlearn and build it up from there. And one statement per value, per keyword. Thank you so much. And thank you for accepting the feedback, because it's also a learning process. As Julia said, they also had the same issue. So I really wanted to take this opportunity to bring out some key points. And we all go through this process as well. Okay. Yeah, sorry, Abena.
Can I ask a quick question? You've been really helpful and precise on sort of the number of statements and the time, but what we haven't touched upon is what might that look like in terms of number of slides, if it is going to be a slides.
Okay, so number of slides. So Brandt has, and that's a whole other story. Brandt says that put very little information in a slide, basically. So you're not writing statements, you just put keywords and bullets, basically, and speak to them. So, I mean, if they're 25, it depends how long. If you're doing a presentation, If you're looking just to pitch, well, then I would keep it to less than 10 slides. But if you're looking to broaden this pitch into a more complex presentation, you could go up to 25 slides, basically talking to each bullet point in more detail. But for a 3-minute pitch, I would not put a lot of text. And he says that because people feel like if you put a lot of text, it sort of feels like you don't know what you're doing. So maybe images, keywords are interesting to convey, you know, the overall, the what. You could have like 1 slide or 2 about the what, the 1 slide or 2 about how, and 1 slide or 2 for the other 2 sections as well. I wouldn't put too much information because you want them just to concentrate on what you're saying.
And what about, although you might say this is a big no-no, if it's at the very sort of beginning of the process when you're actually just emailing it to somebody when they've asked for more information?
I would make a sort of, you want to do a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation? You would
For
make
example, yeah.
A pitch deck. Well, I think I would keep it to like 10 slides max, really. But if you're really first time you meet somebody, I would have a summary, a 1-pager, very honest. I wouldn't go into a presentation. I would have a 1-pager, what we do, how we do it, proof of what we're doing, and, you know, our expertise on sort of 1 page, basically. You wouldn't write whack down because they wouldn't get it, but I would leave it to 1 page. 1 page is more than enough. But if you're making a pitch deck, then you would perhaps put more information in there because you're presenting something to, I don't know, for an edition or to a company or something like that. What we didn't touch upon here is obviously the opening and the closing. The opening is once you've got the core part, it could be something personal, like, you know, why you're doing this, sort of, you know, get people interested. And then the edge, the story of, you know, the aha moment, this is what he called the aha moment. It's really important to see, you know, what would fit. Is it about a beneficiary? Is it something that you've achieved? You know, if it's changing policy, we know it takes years. So after 10 years, you know, we did X, Y, Z, and finally it came through. So people be like, aha, so that's, you know, that's why all of this is happening. So you need to think about this aha moment. He said it's like in a film where suddenly like, I get it, you know, something that would help people to understand it. It's short and sweet. And often as you're working your pitch, it will come across in an evident way, actually. And closing, always have something clear. So that's it from me. I took a bit longer. Kai and Julia, if you still want to spend a bit of time, I'm happy to spare 5 minutes for you.
Julia rose a hand. I think she has
Yeah, I have a question that may be helpful for others as well. I was wondering to what extent we tailor, like we have different pitches, or if we work from this sort of 40, 60 pool of statements to then prepare a pitch per occasion. Because one of the things that we encounter a lot is that some of the topics we work with are really, really technical, which means some of the funders we would approach, for example, may know all about it, maybe even more technical than we are, and some others will have no idea what we're talking about. Absolutely. So it's like sort of how to strike that balance between, you know, sort of like stating the obvious for some people and like being so technical that like they don't know what you're saying for others. So yeah, I was just wondering if we sort of have like, if we have this pool of 60 and we have different levels of complexity, or if perhaps we have actually like a broader pool just because we may have a broader audience, like broader, more audiences and more different between them than perhaps other organizations might.
I think that you have this pool of 60 or 80, whatever it is, and then you pull and create the pitches according to what you're pitching. So sometimes you're pitching your organization, but sometimes you want to pitch a project. You know, so the what would be very little about your organization, perhaps you already know, but more about the project, the what of the project. So if you have several statements, then you pull and take what is important and what you can put together. And if you have very technical pitches, then you could go through this process for the technical projects that you have and come up with pitches that work for that audience. So obviously, yes, you must consider your audience. You must consider, understand the level of information that they know about you. So if it's people that have no idea, then you're very general. But if they already know you, they've known you for 5 years and you're pitching a project, you're not going to spend, your 9 statements explaining what your organization is, you're talking about, what your organization is in terms of impact rather than, who you are. So you need to be able to sort of understand who your audience is when you have that information. So there will be several pitches, and there will be some pitches that are quite general that you can use. So for example, if you have a donor type, you have you're going to small donations, or small donation, for example, you could have a quite general pitch that you could use a certain version of it for email correspondence, for getting people to come to events and things like that. That would be more general. You may also say, okay, I want to ask for funding for a campaign. If you're, it was, sorry, Abigail, I think, who said that they're looking to scale up. So there could be a pitch that talks about by 2025, we want to be at X, we want to reach a certain goal. And that could be the pitch about, the campaign that you're looking to speak to. So some can be general and some would have to be adapted. Okie dokie. Well, thank you very much. And Kai and Julia, if you want to stay afterwards, I obviously can give you 5 minutes. And I'm more than available if you need any help. I hope I haven't confused you and that I've given you tools to work at. But I see that all of you already have got the gist of what's going on, and feel free to test it with your entourage, with your colleagues, anybody, so that you can get positive criticism, even if it's not always what you're expecting. It helps you to refine your pitch and speak to lay people and technical people and really try and see whether it's making sense.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Abena. It was really, really delightful presentation, very practical as well. Thanks as well for your generous sharing of all the skills and techniques. So I will follow up with the email with the participants and share whatever has to be shared, and also recordings will be posted. And thank you very much, Abena, and thank you everybody as well. So that if you wish to follow up with Julia and Kai, I leave you